Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space, where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hi. Welcome back to another episode of With Love, Jenny. One of the things that we do here on this podcast is talk about real life. We talk about the hard parts, the happy parts, things that make us laugh, things that make us think. We explore beyond the great beyond. We talk about just about anything that has to do with life. And in our last two episodes, we've been going on a journey into the horrific struggle of mental health, substance use disorders, and eventual loss of a child with our guest speaker today, who's here back with us, and her name is Dawn Lohr. Dawn and I have been with each other through a lot of our really hard, difficult parts of life, along with our celebrations too. But we have known each other a lot. And Dawn's son, John, struggled with some mental health issues and addiction or substance use. We're not sure. Traumatic brain injuries and how they all collided into a very heartbreaking struggle for John, as well as for her as a mother, trying to get the help he needed and navigate some impossible waters. I have been in some of those waters myself, and I know that firsthand the fear and the gripping reality that that world delivers. Tragically, John took his life, and Dawn and her family went through the experience of that loss. And in our last episode, she shared kind of the details of what she did to get through each day and how difficult it was and how you have to kind of tuck yourself in from the world for a little while. And getting through his first service, and then they had a second celebration of life service because one of her children couldn't attend, the first one being that he was in Korea. So she's had two services, and the last one was this spring where they released his ashes and did their final farewell of this life, but continuing her relationship and journey with him in a spiritual arena. But today, Dawn is here to talk about how do you get through something like that? And how do you navigate all the stages of grief that come with the loss, a tragic loss and an unexpected loss? It's never really something you think you're going to experience as a parent. And I don't think, anyone who passes away tragically like that with suicide or through a sudden loss, it's our bodies, our mind, our spirit goes into a tailspin. And so we're going to talk about all the different ways you felt your grief and how you're doing now, because you're still grieving and it hasn't even, you're still in the first year. And this is part of that for you. I think that when I invited you to talk about it and said, you say when, one of the things you said is, I want to be ready to tell this story. It's part of your healing journey. So my hope is that while you're being so gracious to share your story in order to help others, I'm hoping this is also going to be healing process for you as well. But thank you for being here, Dawn. And let's pick up, our first episode was more the journey into the mental health and the substances. And the second one was what happened that led to that fateful day. And now we're into, okay, how do you do it? How do you grieve? How do you move forward? How do you survive this worst nightmare?
Thank you, Jenny, for having me again. And thank you for just being this open space to be able to talk about this. Because like you said, and what I share with you is that this does help me as well to kind of go through the healing process of losing John. One of the things I did before he even passed to kind of tell his story, because it was helping me as I was going through the hard times of getting help for him with his dual diagnosis of both his depression and it moved into mania and his brain injury. And he did have substance abuse as well. As I began to write a book, and I'd written the book, and had told John I wrote it, and he said, "That's great, Mom." And, I shared it with him in October, and he said, I do want you to share it with the world, Mom. And as Jenny said, tragically, we lost him at the end of November. And I think the first stage of grief, Jenny, is shock. And it's one that, obviously everybody experiences that. That's the first thing you experience, but a lot of people push it away. And I think for me, as I allowed myself to go through I would cry every day. I would pound my fists in the pillows. I would go to the beach and scream. Anything I could do. Yes, the shock is there, but to acknowledge it and not say that it didn't happen or I'm okay or bury my head in the sand and say, I don't want to deal with it. So it's like all of the things I felt all of that. First of all, I wanted to do all of that, but I know that I had to, as I shared in the last episode, I fell to the ground when I got the news and cried uncontrollably. I was crying throughout that entire day. And it continues. It's not like it goes away, but it's like at some point, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but yeah, my thought was like, okay, I'm going to be inside my house for the rest of my life because I don't want to deal with this and I don't want to talk to people. And you will feel that way at first. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. I don't think it ever really had, I think the denial piece for me was more, not that it happened, but that what could I have done differently? I don't know if that's really denial, but like denying the fact that I did enough or, could I have done more? That's kind of where that piece of it was for me. And I shared a little bit about, that I have to forgive myself for that. Mm-hmm. And I opened up the door that, that I am having those connections with John and that I truly know that he said there's nothing to forgive, Mom. And that really helped with my healing. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful words to hear. And I want everybody to understand that as part of Dawn's grief journey, she has a strong faith, and we share that, and a belief that his suffering ended that day. And even though hers began in a whole new level, he was free of that suffering, and she can hear him and sense him, and he's finding ways to communicate with her that's helping her on that healing journey. And one is there's nothing to forgive. And I think it's in a suicide, we talked about suicide grief versus other losses, other ways we lose people. They all have their own distinct nuance on how you can cope with it. And with suicide especially, you look for what could I have done? And I remember getting the call, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, I want to say, and maybe 10:30 in the morning when I got a call from my oldest brother saying that our brother had killed himself. And he told me he shot himself. And I just thought he must have shot himself in the foot or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, is he okay? And he kind of had to say it to me a few times, before it sunk in. And all I wanted to do was negotiate with God and say, please give me back the last 6 hours, or can we have just 12 hours redo? Because I know he would make a different choice. I just desperately needed to rewind time. And you can't. And I guess that was part of one of the stages is the bargaining, and that was me like, I'll give up something if you'll give me 12 hours, and we can redo this so that it doesn't have that outcome. Did you find yourself in that space at all? Or, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, could I, hey, let's do this differently. How about he come stay with me instead of his dad, and we'll take that month. I wanted a whole month. Like you were nice to say 12 hours, like Jenny. I'm like, I want an entire month.
Yeah.
And I'm going to redo this. And then I was like, well, maybe I need to go back further. And then you start that spiral, and it's like that I could see that that was going to cause me more grief, if that makes sense. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't keep like trying to figure out what I could have done or how I could have fixed it or ask God for that time. And I was like, it was making me crazy.
Right.
I was like, it was causing me more stress in on top of the grief.
Right.
And I was just like, but I did go into anger.
Okay.
I didn't have a problem with that one at all, Jenny.
Tell me about that.
No, and I was angry at everything. I was angry at people. Like if I had to go to the grocery store, I was angry that you were there and that you weren't going through this. And I had to still freaking go get my groceries. And yet I was dealing with this. And so I think what for me was like, what a horrible person I am. Like, why am I thinking about this for other people so I was compounding it on top of myself when I was going through those.
Judging yourself for being angry, which is, So
that lasted for a while. And then I was like, I did what you said, like, you feel like you're going to be a hermit. I'm like, I'm staying home. And I will allude back to thank you for the wonderful idea of creating a safe space for me. I really needed that, I took our music room, little study area, and I put everything that was just meant everything to me. Pictures of him. I think the word I was looking for the last episode, my daughter's like, are you creating a shrine for my brother? Like it kind of freaked her out.
This was kind of creepy.
And I go, no. I said, this is just a place that I'm going. You're more than welcome to come and sit in here as well. This just gives me a peace and a solitude that I need right now to kind of process what I'm going through.
Yeah. And she ended up liking it too.
Yeah.
And spending some time there.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you can do that, if you don't have it, whether you're in a grief cycle or not, having a place where it's a sacred space. It's a safe place with your journal. You had mentioned your favorite teacup, a blanket, a candle to light, pictures of who you're grieving or just pictures that you enjoy or inspirational messages, devotion books, a quiet space that you make sacred and spend time there every day. It's where you go to for that peace. I needed that. Not from loss, but from my own chaotic life I was experiencing. And I thought it's sort of like I needed church 24/7. I needed an availability of a sacred place I could go to pray or cry or write or, whatever I needed to do there. I was safe to feel, and it was my space. And when I was in it, people knew, do not disturb. It was just like, she's just in her space right now. And that is something I think we need that to deal with all the things we deal with in our world today. So in the grief cycle, Dawn and I were discussing this ahead of our starting this episode, but they have either 5 or 7, and there's different versions of what are these stages of grief. And what I know are the 5, there's denial. And one of the ways that denial showed up for you wasn't denying reality of it, but denying denying yourself the relief that you needed by piling on should I have done differently and judging yourself and questioning yourself. Did I do enough? I know that that's in there. And that can be a form of denial. And bargaining, which I just talked about, how I was bargaining for the time, if I could just get that time back. Anger and depression, and then acceptance. And acceptance coupled with hope is when you start to come out of that. But the thing about these is that they say there's no progression. There's no normal progression to this. You might start out in anger, and then move into denial last, and go into denial that it even happened. Denial is an interesting thing for me because I like control, so I want to deal with reality. And I don't go into denial very often, but I know people who do. And it's just like a type of compartmentalization. It's like, I can't feel that right now. And so I'm going to pretend it's not there. But we do move in and out. And some people can get to one stage and stay for years before they move to the next one. And one might last 2 weeks. So they don't have the same timeline for every person. And, my experience is that a lot of the people in the world just want you to be okay. They just need you to be okay and be happy again. So they grow weary of your grief journey if you're transparent with it. And what happens to a lot of people is they have to start taking care of other people's feelings about you having those feelings. And so it's exhausting. It's exhausting to process all that and still show up. And when you talked about when you were at the grocery store, it's like, why do you get to be here and I have to be here? And why am I here at the grocery store? And why do you get to be happy today? Because I don't have what you have. Like I'm mad at you because you aren't grieving the loss of your son. And I thought, oh, I wonder how many times somebody's really cranky and really rude and really ugly with me for no reason. And I'm like, what is her deal? Like, those are just, mean people. They're real and really being mean. And I always try to stop myself to say, they're hurting. Something in them is hurting, and still be kind. But when people aren't kind to us, it gives us a license to just be unkind back. And then that was really hurtful to them. So one of the things you did was stay home. And that's probably good. And you need people, like, you need the right people. And so one of the things that when I'm helping someone go through grief is, and I'm asking your opinion because you're in it, but I know for me, I had to cocoon for a while. Instead of isolate, I called it a cocooning. I had to go inside myself. I had to let myself feel whatever I was feeling. I had all my energy was the bare minimum of what I had to do to take care of my, my kids and my family and me. And that was about all I had. But I also really, there was a point when I needed friends and I needed the right kind of support. And some people were not that. They actually were detrimental to my healing journey. And I had to give myself permission to use discernment about who I spent my time with. And some people would be offended because I kept declining invitations. But I had to give myself permission to say no more than ever. Did you have experiences like that, or is that how it was for you?
Yeah, I had all of that. Yes, I like the word cocoon, though, Jenny. I will go back to that. But I mean, at some point, I had to go back to work. I don't have the luxury of just not being able to work. So I was like, that was the biggest fear. I'm like, how am I going to be able to talk to people without breaking out in tears or sobbing, right, when I'm going out back? And so one of the first things I did do is I did select who I was going to be with. And I started to set really beautiful boundaries for myself. I knew that if I didn't do that I was not going to be able to make it. So, when the invitation came even recently, it was, I had to make a choice. My goddaughter just graduated from high school. And I was like, okay, do I go to the graduation? And I knew I would go to the party. Like, I was like, I set boundaries for myself. My daughter was going to go with me. And I was like, okay, I'll do an hour. We'll see how I'm feeling, And so that would have been on that Sunday. And the night before, I'm like, this is her graduation. Like, so I had to decide, do I want to do this and still have an exit strategy if I need to? So every choice I made it, okay, is this going to be good for me? And at times I'm like, no, it will be good for me. I want to be there. But it's always, you shared something recently, Jenny, when it came to my friends that I've got coming to visit that I thought was lovely. Say, hey, here's where I am. I'd like us to, engage in this fun weekend as fun. And if I need to step aside, it has nothing to do with you, but just, I'd love to being able to share that with people. And I think that made a huge difference. So I actually called her mother before I went and I told her how I was feeling and I'm planning on coming, but I just wanted to let you know. And she's like, whatever you want, she was completely, but as her godmother, I wanted to be there to support. So I realized I had to be very, very discerning in what was important and to take care of myself all along the way. So,
right. It is that. It's how do I take care of myself while doing what I know I need and want to do? Your heart wants to be there, but you also know that your grief, you don't know even from one day to the next how it's going to be. And I remember early on when we were working together at the beginning of this grief journey, and you were like, there's days where you were kind of saying it like, this is really bad, but there's days where I can get up and I get a shower and I get dressed, but that's it. I'm done for the day. Like, you couldn't do more. You just had to go back to bed. And I'm like, that's a gold star. You get a gold star for just getting out of bed. I mean, it's that hard. And give yourself grace and have compassion, give yourself time. Sometimes you can get stuck in the cocoon. It's like you want to stay there, but you have to force yourself to emerge eventually and then test the water and say, all right, I can do, 4 hours out in the world, and then I've got to come home and take care of myself again. But I feel like, at least the first year, and that's a long time, you have permission to take care of what you need to. And I think beyond that, if still needed, but if we don't, for people that just bounce back into life and they don't take the time to really process it, it shows up in unexpected ways. And grief is heavy. It's a heavy energy that we feel. So we tend to not want to. We tend to want to can I just be happy again? Will I ever feel joy again? And I also think we get an emotional attachment to our grief as it's the last stronghold to that person. It's like that's what's left. And then we want to hold on. It's almost a betrayal to the person we lost if we are happy again. And that's not how it is for them. They want you to be happy, I'm sure. In most cases, I want to assume that they would. But I know for me, it was like hard to just, how can I be happy, with this grief, this sadness, this loss, and everybody else whose lives were affected by it. I know that we have a dear family friend who lost their son from a addiction journey. And there's also some survivor guilt. I'd carry that. And with my son, John, has gone through an addiction. And along the way, so many, lost their battle with that disease. And we still have him, and he has a beautiful son and a wife and a family, and it's survivor guilt with that. It's like, how do I have that, and you and others that have had that robbed. And so the grief also is not just what isn't there right now, but for all the things yet to experience that aren't going to be there.
Yeah, I had a moment of that watching the Olympics. I saw one of the swimmers win, and I saw the family, and her family was there. All their siblings were there. And I'm like, yeah, it hit.
Yeah.
It hit. It's like, not that he would be swimming, in the Olympics, but that, any
all
moment,
the family together.
All the family together, and any moment going forward, there's one family member that won't be there.
Right. Yeah, you start to realize like that seat at the table, that gift not under the tree. Those are those moments when grief will come knocking again, and you have to just let yourself go, okay, I feel that. And that's an energy, and it does. They say it never heals. Grief never really goes away. You just learn how to wear it and carry it as a new norm, so it's not quite as foreign as it is at the first year of milestones. When my dad passed away and I watched my mom grieve, they were together for I forget, 60 some years. And I watched her grieve, and the year passed, the 1 year anniversary passed. And I kind of thought that she was the kind that would say, okay, Alice, this is what Ben would have told me. He would have said, it's time for you to get up and go do something. He would have, and I thought she'd have a talk with herself and sort of come back. And she never did. And she said, I thought the second year would be easier, but it's harder. And for her, it didn't get better that second year. And I thought, isn't it funny how we do put expectations and assign a timeline to something like grief is the silliest thing I think we could ever do, because it does hit in unexpected places, and you have to be prepared to okay, I have to give myself some time. And I think self-care, self-compassion, self-nurturing are never more critical than when you're grieving. And so you mentioned your sacred space, and you did have your services, which in our last episode, we talked a little bit about that too, and the coming together of your family right afterward, being there and holding each other together were things that were comforting, and having friends that are those kind of people you can be whatever you are around. Those are priceless friends. And then, yes, telling people how to help you, because grief just doesn't, it's not a one size fits all. And what works for one person may not be at all what the next person needs. Where you wanted to kind of hide away for a little while, cocoon, other people might say, I needed people to come every day. When my mother-in-law was visiting shortly after my father-in-law passed away, and the kids, and we had all had dinner, and I was cleaning the kitchen up and getting them scuttled off to get homework done and bedtime and stuff. And my mother-in-law got really upset. I don't know what happened. I never knew what triggered it, but it was just all of a sudden she got upset and walked out of the room. And so I got the kids settled, and then I went to go upstairs to see if she was okay. And she was on the stair sobbing. And I said, Elizabeth, I said, oh my goodness, what's going on? And she said, no one says his name. And I asked her, what? And she said, no one says his name anymore. Where, the kids weren't like, where's Grandpa Bill? We miss Grandpa Bill. They didn't acknowledge it. And we weren't talking about it because she was grieving. And the not talking about it for her was devastating. It's like he just doesn't exist. It was like he was never here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we just didn't know what you needed. And so we kind of need to hear, what is it that will comfort you? And then listen, and don't assume because you probably don't. Everybody's different in those stages of their grief journey. So in this episode, speaking of grief, I want to give people tools to use and things to do so that going on like nothing ever happened helps them if they're in denial. Right. Going along as if nothing happens if they're angry is not such a great idea. And getting upset with them because they yelled at you when you asked, how can I help? And they're like, I just want you to, make this all go away, and you're screaming your anger out. Don't be offended. Just understand all those stages have a need. Each one has something it's needing, which is why they are stages, right? And we have to have all those needs met at some point. And you're not in control of the timeline any more than anyone else can be. We just have to go with it. But you are coming up on the 1 year mark.
Well, actually, Jenny, I start to count the days. I'm at day 251, and I don't know why I do it that way, but I've been doing the day counting, which is, I don't know if that's helpful or not. So back to like telling people what you need. I understand what she was feeling. And so it's both sides. So I'm trying to figure out how to speak to my children, to talk about him, saying what I need to my husband. Like, so remember at the time I was like, what do you mean we're going to a fancy Italian restaurant? Like, what? Now all I want him to do is cook all the time, because I don't want to do it. Right. And so I literally had that conversation again on Friday. I was like, and I finally understood. He's like, I feel like when you say I'm not there for you in this way, he's like, I'm trying to be there for you in every way. So it's like a catch-22. It's like, you do want to share with them how you're feeling. And you want to say, and thank you for being there for me. And can you also? So I noticed with him when I went into, well, you're not doing this. He's hearing it as I'm not doing anything. And that's not what I was saying. So I had to be really careful and again, you're grieving. You're like thinking, what? Why do I have to come up with this?
Right.
Like, why do I have to be the one to?
Right. Yeah.
But you're in relationships, you have to relate. I understand. But it's still, I have to figure out a way to express what I need. And I think that would be the first thing. Obviously, respect your time, take your time. If you need to go to the bathroom and scream or whatever, or cry when you're in the middle of your day, go ahead and do that. But let's take it to the positive side too, like the self-care. I do get up every morning I do have my meditation. I'm taking my time in the morning because when I feel rushed, it does not help me in the day. I want to crawl right back into the bed. So I've started to create those rituals that help me through the day. Having the boundaries of like, okay, yes, I can go, I can meet you for that. You know, I had a friend the other day said, can we do lunch? Like she hadn't heard from me in a while. Would lunch be okay? And I was like, yes, I would love lunch, but I understand it. They don't know how I'm doing.
Right.
And so again, I'm not saying you have to go and tell everybody, okay, here's where I'm at right now. You can ask me to go. I'm not saying that, but just at the same time to be able to say, I would love lunch, or actually, can we do lunch in 3 weeks or a month or whatever? And I still want, to be out, to go out and see you and be with you. So yeah, just time for yourself, the boundaries, rituals. If I don't like that word, I would just say the self-care, like really taking the time. Like you even said something beautiful at the beginning. Like if you need to just get out and go take a walk, go take that walk. It needs to be yeah. So those kind of things, just, I'm really honoring those things for myself more. And then being a mother and having the other children, I do talk about him. I do say his name. I could tell my youngest gets a little ruffled, but it's his brother.
Yep. And that might be okay because it's letting him not be in denial, and it's a safe way for him to hear it. And he might be like uncomfortable, but that's what needs processed, right? So that he can be comfortable one day again.
And and one day I do it. One way I do it, Jenny, is I don't just say, okay, we're going to talk about John now. No,
right.
Do it like that. I mean, I'd be like, oh, you know what? I bet John would really like that. Watching the soccer right now during the Olympics, as an example. Yeah. That's how I do it. So it's not like, okay, we're going to sit for 30 minutes and, no, it's more, it's
not bringing a therapy session. It's just remembering he's still a part of our story, and it's a way of honoring him for you.
Now, I did share with the youngest about, I have a book that was given to me. It was about signs, like things in the universe and he actually, right after John passed, someone that he knew, it wasn't a close friend, but it was in his circle. I think a drunk driver killed him. But it was kind of way out more in the country here outside of Charleston. And they used to call him, his parents called him, his name is Brooks, but they call him Brooks Bear. Like Brooks Berry, or like that was their little nickname for him. And when the parents went out to the site a couple days after, there were 2 baby bears that were there right by the site. And I shared with him that I often see, it was very interesting that you said, Kristen said on one of the last calls that she saw a yellow butterfly go by. I see John presents himself in butterflies, and
yes.
So, it was very interesting that she said that. I didn't bring it up then, but I was like, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So I shared that with him, that I was reading this book that talked about these different things, and he opened up and shared that story. And I just said, have you had any moments like that? He goes, no, not yet. And I said, your brother sends songs to your father and I that we truly believe are coming from him. These are songs we haven't heard of ever before, or not in a million years or whatever, or very long time. And the lyrics mean something. And he's like, I'll start to pay attention. It was just,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think it's also helping others through grief. So I guess that's why I'm sharing that too.
Yes.
Within our own families too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's that spiritual connection that we still have. And some people don't look for those signs, or maybe think it's hogwash. I mean, they could be like, that's just what people do that are desperate to make something up. But the coincidence, I don't believe in coincidence in the first place, but they're so relevant. They're so clear when they come through like that there's just no mistaking. And if you're open to it, it becomes the most comforting, beautiful moment that you get to share in the way that they find their way in to give a sign. And that's what it is. And there's a book called Signs. I don't know if that's the one you were reading.
That is, but yeah. Yep.
So, and that does help you process the grief because, and this goes into the faith. Our faith is always never more defined as in our grief, because it's what do we believe after this life? What, some believe that you're incarnated in a different, you come back as something else, and others, there's an eternal life and your soul lives in this beautiful place. And so whatever your faith is, it factors into the grief journey. And for people who do believe in eternal life and do believe that there are other realms that we can't understand and see in our limitation as a human, some do, but most of us are just waiting for signs. We can at least see them. We can see those signs and feel a presence, the essence of that person. Some of the other things that I know I did is that I wanted to create something lasting. I made a memory album for all the people in our family, and it had all of his favorite things was a section of this memory album. And my brother, I think they were called Sugar Smacks back in the day as a cereal. Now they call them Honey Smacks, I think, because it sounds healthier. But I didn't like them because they were sticky and they were they'd drop them on the rug, and they were banned from our house. But when he came, everybody got them. And so that was in there, pictures of him with his Honey Smacks. And those things still to this day make me smile and bring me warmth. And sometimes my kids will get things because they're Uncle Andy's. They were little when this happened, when he died. But what are some of the things that you do to bring that warmth and that smile back to your face in your ways of remembering?
I mean, I do have pictures of him around here, so every day I'm looking at them. But I do bring out his albums, and I love that. But sometimes it's just a random thought that'll come across my head. Like the other day, I forgot that he loved playing chess, and he was really good at chess. And it's just, I love when the memories start coming in. I do like the memory book idea. It's probably something I will be doing for Christmas for everyone, at least the children to start,
And doing it with what were his favorite things?
I like that. I kind of like that.
Because that captures so much and just favorite memories. But doing that, it was such a big help for me in my grief, because it was almost like I was afraid I'd start to forget. I was afraid there would be parts of him that I wouldn't remember. And so I wanted to do it all that I could. I couldn't do it fast enough. And that was my cocoon project. It took me about 3 months of that, that's all I did. We, like you, had a celebration of life 4 months later. And so I wanted to have them for everyone then. And it was good to come back together as a family after we had had time to digest it all. And we were still grieving, and everyone had whatever they had going on, but it was good to come back together. So as people go through, we talked about the stages, and, the denial has its place. Bargaining has its place, anger, well-deserved, and one of the things that I remember talking about, because you live near the coast, is being able to go to the beach, but connecting to nature for me was really big, and being able to see a waterfall or hike to a mountaintop and look over the hills and understand, it puts things in a perspective that gives me comfort. Watching the sunrise over the ocean was comforting. Feeling the soothing rhythm of the waves was comforting. So for someone going through grief, if you can put yourself in whatever nature that calls to you, wherever you feel. For me, I always felt my connection to God through those places. It's just the way that I just felt that more so there than in my busy life, driving around in a car and sitting in a computer. It's getting out and looking at the sky and looking at the horizon and going to places that are just beautiful was very helpful. One of the other stages, there's obvious depression around it. And depression was a piece of John's story with this, struggling with that and making sure everybody else is. Do you find yourself hypervigilant with others now?
Well, with all three of them. Yeah. So I think I shared that the oldest is having anxiety. He's in Korea, and therapy is not a thing out there.
Yeah.
So just helping him kind of navigate that. My daughter does have anxiety as well, and depression. She has her own health issues that she's been dealing with. I guess epilepsy is kind of that's a mental health issue too, correct? I mean,
yeah, I think it's a neurological and mental health. It falls in a category, and it has its side effect is probably, feeling anxiety and depression for the condition that she has. So
yeah, so hyper vigilant with both of them, especially the younger one who doesn't really want to talk about these things. But then what you just shared, though, like since everything's happened, he's hiked 4 different places already, including Mount Rainier out in.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's how and I think it's beautiful. I mean, if that's how he wants to do it, but I am very hypervigilant watching them and kind of, And the nature is huge for me. I actually started to recreate my backyard also. So his dad sent me a Jonathan apple tree. And then we had the tree from the memorial service. I did a memory tree. I did a magnolia. And
nice.
It's already been planted. Now I've added flowers, but it is another safe, place next to nature that really does help heal me. But yes, I'm like you do. I do like all the mountaintop experiences as well, the beach and all of that. But if I need to just pop out in the backyard,
it's nice to create that sacred space indoors and a beautiful place that you can just walk out your door and sit in nature in some form or fashion. Is big. So you just mentioned trees. Kristen isn't here with us today, and I wish she was, because when her dad passed away, a group of us went in and had a tree planted, and we did research of because you don't want it to not survive, right? And so we were like, what's going to be the best way that we can have this tree? And she picked it, and her husband said they had a place in the yard for it, and we ordered it, and she got it. And I envisioned this, already established tree. And this thing is the little Charlie Brown, 12 inches tall out of the ground. But she went out and she put twinkle lights on it because one of her favorite things was plugging the lights in before they were on the tree, and that all the different colors would light up, and she would light up like sparkle like the Christmas tree. And so she put them on her dad's little tree at Christmas time. And we planted it in the middle of the year, but he died at Christmas time. And every year she goes out, but she'd water it every day and sit and talk to her dad. And so planting a memory tree in your yard, especially where you can visit it and see it, is there's something that keeps that alive. The relationship is you have a place that connects you. And that's a way to move into that, to transition into that new relationship. Right. Yeah. So trees are wonderful and a wonderful gift. And you have to be aware that not all of them, you have to plant it again another time, maybe. Yeah. So that's beautiful too. And is there anything else? I'm curious about things that people said or did that were particularly helpful, gifts or remembrances, things that were particularly soothing to you that you remember, and then things that people might have done or not done that weren't helpful.
Yeah. So a group of my writing friends actually were the ones that sent me the teacup and a journal and the very fluffy blanket. It was just kind of I love the image of like that they were saying, okay, we know you need this time, to yourself. I thought that was beautiful. Again, the tree was from his dad. We are not together, but we are going through this journey together though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he bought one for himself and he bought one for me. Mine's looking like a Charlie Brown tree. The magnolia, though, that we got, I bought a larger one, so that's doing a little bit better. But I was like, I'm out there watering it too, and I'm like, come on. I'm like, come on. There's a couple leaves coming up a little. I was like, okay, let's just keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was beautiful. And he actually he bought the same wind chimes that I did. It was so interesting. He sent it to me right before the memorial service. He's like, I want wind chimes, and he's like, here's the website. I'm going to send you some as well. And he said, they have different melodies. So he's like, pick your melody. So I was listening and I was like, well, this is the best. This is what I want. And he's like, nuh-uh. I said, what do you mean, nuh-uh? I said, that's what I want. So that's the exact one I picked. So we picked the same melody.
Wow.
And so we just got different colors. But he gifted that to me. My oldest gifted me a journal. A friend, a massage was very nice. That was gifted.
Yeah.
And my other friends did give me another set of wind chimes. I don't think they knew about the other one, but it's still beautiful. Loved it.
Yeah.
And my other girlfriends are coming to visit. Like that was they came to the memorial service, my high school friends, but they're also coming to do they're like, we want to have a fun trip with you. So they'll be here in the fall.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not a tough place to come visit. I tease that. I'm like, Charleston's it's not like you're coming to Minnesota or something.
Right. Yeah. There,
I just
South
tease
Carolina
them.
is awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
And I can't say I got a gift or anything that was, no, there wasn't really anything.
That's
I
good.
mean, I don't think anybody would send something or give you something. I maybe think that was a little difficult. Like my best friend Mindy gave me because it was Christmas time. She gave me an ornament that had cardinals on it, or a cardinal on it. It says "always in my mind, always in my heart, forever on my mind," and his dates. And that beautiful, but just still hard because it made me think
the reality.
Made me think of the first one was your baby. You get the baby one, and now I'm like, So that was hard. I wouldn't say it was a terrible gift. It was a beautiful gift. Just hard to,
Yeah. I remember when Andy died, my parents were getting cards in the mail, and some people would send the card and they just signed their name. That was it. And one of them they got was his roommate in college, and he had written like a 5-page letter about all the wonderful things that they did and how he made him laugh and things that we didn't even know, that he did for others. And I contrasted the two, and I was grateful that people took the time to send a card. But I realized that it would be so much better to write a few words about how you knew them or what you loved about them or something, because those stories and those memories, those seem to be the one thing that just brings so much like comfort. So if there's something you need to do, just write a few words of not about them, but about the person they lost.
So that's what the memory tree was, Jenny. That's what that was. We had, it's kind of like we made them look like ornaments almost, but like ornament paper, and they wrote and they hung them on the tree.
Oh, nice. I like that.
And so to give them a moment to be with him, to say a prayer, if they wanted it to be a prayer, if they wanted it to be words. I had funny stories that were left about me. I'm like, well, it's not about me, but that's okay, girls, know, whatever. Or they remember funny things that happened with him when we were on a vacation or something like that. But those things, so just, I hope this helps people with ideas for, if someone you have that you love is going through something.
I love that.
Or lost somebody,
Yeah, because I just found that reminiscing and telling old stories, and remember the time when he did this or said that, or one time this was going on, and all of those, they're bittersweet in the moment, but they're mostly comforting. And that's why we gather. It's for us, to heal. And so I think whether you're sending a card or attending and thinking about, beyond the casserole, like beyond the casserole. And then as time, everybody rushes, and then it's like a month later, everybody's life is going on, and you're sitting in that reality, and the denial is not there anymore. You're like, because it's busy when you're preparing for a service, and there's a lot to do right initially, and company is coming, and it's all that flurry of stuff, and then everybody's gone. And I felt that too. I felt now I'm supposed to do life, and I don't know how to do it right now, and everything's changed. And then you're sitting there. So don't forget, like if someone's lost someone, make it a year-long commitment to support them. Just don't be afraid to say, I'm just thinking of you, and I'm thinking about, John, and, how are you doing today? That, like, say his name and tell a story or just give love. One of the things that I found difficult was, and this is across the board when someone's going through something, whether it's grief or not, is give love, not advice. If they ask, if I said, what would you do? I'd like your opinion on this. But when someone's like, you really should be doing more. You should be going to, pickleball more, or you should be getting out more, or you need to get out of bed and take a shower. And it's days where you really need to, the best thing you can do for yourself is stay in bed, And when people start telling you should be doing something, it's not helpful. It really isn't, even if it's true. It doesn't inspire you to get out of bed. But what you could say is, I'm worried it's been 6 months and you're still struggling, and I'm worried. How can I help? What can we do? What would you like to do? Can I just come and sit with you? Can I take you somewhere for lunch? What can we do? And that's much easier to ask what they need than to tell them what you think they should be doing. And so those are the only two things that I recall going, that wasn't very helpful. So telling stories and endearing, memories that they get to feel again is a beautiful thing, and help people, stay connected and help people walk through this heavy energy of grief. So everybody's in a different stage, and they do their stage at different times, and everybody needs something different in every stage. So there's no prescription that anybody's going to follow, and each loss has its own story behind it itself, and that taints the journey as well. So Dawn, thank you for being gracious enough to share yourself, your journey as a mom, your grief, but also John's story and his journey and his struggle. And I hope that through these episodes and people hearing this, that they have an awareness, not just of their own mental health and how they're doing, but the people around them, and to really not be afraid to ask the questions and afraid of the stigma of what it means to say, I need help. There's I think it's even called gethelp.com, that helps you get in touch with a mental health service. And we will put resources in the show notes so people have them, but 988 is the number to call if you need help. And we both, Dawn and I, can say that losing someone to suicide is a tragedy. It's just a heartbreaking tragedy. And we want people to know to get help. Please ask for help and don't give up. And for people who have gone through it, support each other in the way that helps them, and let them know they're not alone in the grieving process. So thank you for your contribution in this discussion.
Thank you, Jenny.
You all can't see her, but she has this beautiful smile with a few little tears, but you are just a beacon of light and a strong person. And I'm so blessed to have you as a person in my life and a friend and someone who is teaching me what strength looks like. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, for those of you listening, take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and be mindful. Do all of that with love. Take care. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart. And I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself and do so with love.